So, welcome to today's deep dive. I want you to picture this. You're just standing in your bathroom, maybe brushing your teeth, and suddenly you hear this frantic, muffled scratching sound.
Yeah, coming from right inside the exhaust fan, right above your head.
Exactly. And I mean, your first instinct is probably to just, brush it off. It's just a quirk of home ownership, right? Like maybe a bird just landed on the roof or something.
Which is what everyone hopes, obviously.
Right. But we're pulling apart some really fascinating research and field notes today from a Texas wildlife removal company that honestly proves ignoring that faint scratching sound is a massive, massive risk.
It really is. It escalates so quickly.
It does. So we're diving into materials from the Critter team. They operate out of Cypress, Texas, to look at how, a tiny bird nesting in your wall can rapidly trigger federal legal penalties, spark an actual house fire,
And literally blast a biohazard straight into your living room.
yes, which is terrifying. But before we get to the literal biohazard part, we really need to understand how this even happens.
Well, the jump from a minor nuisance to a full-blown structural and biological crisis, it happens a whole lot faster than people realize. I mean, when we look at this through the lens of professional wildlife control, we aren't just talking about, a stray animal that accidentally wandered indoors.
Right. It's not a mistake on the bird's part.
Not at all. We are looking at this fascinating, almost inevitable collision between human architecture, material degradation, and wildlife adapting to these perfectly synthesized ecosystems we've built.
I love that phrasing, synthesized ecosystems,
Yeah.
because the way we build our homes, especially in these sprawling suburban developments, it inadvertently creates the ultimate sanctuary for very specific types of birds.
It really does. And to grasp how that collision happens, you have to look closely at the environment our sources are focusing on, which is Cypress, Texas.
Right, so if you drive along the US 290 corridor, that's about 24 miles or so northwest of downtown Houston, you see this massive, ongoing residential boom.
Massive is almost an understatement. We're talking about tens of thousands of homes built in these huge waves.
Like from the 1980s all the way through the 2000s, right?
Exactly. Which puts a huge percentage of that housing stock in a very specific age bracket.
Oh, meaning the materials are starting to fail.
Precisely. The physical barriers that were designed to keep the outside world out, they're experiencing natural material fatigue. You have to factor in the intense Texas sun.
Oh yeah, the heat down there is brutal.
It's the heat, but specifically the UV radiation. It just bombards the exterior of these homes year-round. Over 20 or 30 years, that UV exposure literally strips the chemical plasticizers out of the exterior vent covers.
So what used to be this nice, flexible plastic.
Become incredibly brittle, like fragile. A single severe hailstorm, or honestly just the thermal expansion and contraction from day-to-night temperature swings is enough to crack those plastic louvers wide open.
Wow, so you just end up with these perfectly custom-sized entry points all over the exterior of the house.
Yeah.
Like glowing neon vacancy signs for birds.
That is exactly what they are to a scouting bird. But, it's not just the aging architecture that's drawing them in, it's the neighborhood design itself.
Right, because the sources point out that Cypress is heavily defined by Cypress Creek and these enormous master planned communities, places like Bridgeland, Towne Lake, Canyon Lakes West.
Yeah. And those developments are specifically engineered around massive water features. They have these huge interconnected lakes, retention ponds, and miles of beautifully landscaped green space.
It's gorgeous for humans, obviously.
But from a biological standpoint, the developers have accidentally engineered a continuous drought-resistant oasis.
Oh, I see.
You have dense suburban landscaping that provides an endless subsidized food source, seeds from feeders, insects, garbage. And that's paired with constant, reliable access to open water.
So if you're a bird looking for a habitat, it literally sounds like paradise. But okay, here's the thing I keep getting stuck on when I was reading through these field notes.
Okay, what's that?
If I'm a bird, right, and I have access to these beautiful, quiet, master-planned parks with thousands of mature, shady trees, why am I choosing to build my nest inside a greasy kitchen range hood or a noisy metallic dryer vent? It makes no sense to me.
I get that, but it really just comes down to the brutal mechanics of survival in the wild. I mean, in a natural setting, a tree leaves a nest totally exposed.
Exposed to, like, weather.
Weather, yeah. Wind, rain, but primarily a whole hierarchy of predators. You've got snakes, raccoons, larger predatory birds.
Oh, right. A tree isn't exactly a fortress.
Exactly. But a dryer vent or a bathroom exhaust tube, it completely flips that vulnerability. It offers an enclosed metal or PVC-lined cavity that is physically impenetrable to most predators. A raccoon can't squeeze into a 4-inch metal duct.
Wow. And I guess furthermore, it's climate controlled.
It is. It's essentially a heavily fortified, heated bunker. The thermal mass of the house keeps that vent warm in the winter and shaded from the brutal sun in the summer.
That's incredibly smart.
It is. When a scouting bird discovers that a broken louver provides a steady shield from the elements, it locks onto that location. And the biology of these specific birds means they don't just use it once and move on.
They stay.
They possess what's called high site fidelity, meaning they will return to that exact same vent season after season.
Oh, man. And they also signal the real estate to other birds, don't they?
Yes, they do.
Yeah.
You might start with a single nesting pair, but because these exhaust vents are often clustered together on the side of a house, bathroom, laundry, kitchen, all venting on the same wall.
You can quickly end up running a multi-generational bird hotel.
Exactly, which introduces a massive layer of complexity for the homeowner, because as the notes detail, evicting those guests isn't a simple matter of just grabbing a ladder, climbing up, and pulling the nest out.
Right, because the specific species of bird taking up residence in your vents dictates entirely what you are legally allowed to do. And the legal distinctions here are, honestly, completely counterintuitive.
They really are. This legal aspect catches so many homeowners off guard.
It totally surprised me when I read it. The Critter team identifies 3 primary culprits targeting homes in Cypress, specifically around the 777429 and 777433 zip codes. They are house sparrows, European starlings, and grackles.
Right, the big 3 for that area.
And, my initial thought was just, well, a bird is a bird. If it's in my wall, it's a pest, I can remove it. But Texas and federal law treat these 3 birds vastly differently.
They do, and the entire legal framework is dictated by the origin of the species.
Origin, like where they came from historically.
Exactly. House sparrows and European starlings are non-native. They are invasive species that were actually introduced to North America from Europe back in the 1800s.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize they weren't native.
Yeah, and because they are invasive, they actively compete with native wildlife for resources, and they often aggressively displace native birds.
So how does the law treat them?
Well, therefore, under the Texas Parks and Wildlife Code, their nests, their eggs, and the birds themselves carry absolutely zero legal protection.
Zero, meaning a homeowner or a wildlife control operator can just remove their nests at any stage of development, no permit required. They essentially have no rights.
Correct. But however, the grackle completely changes the equation.
Because they're native.
Yes. Common grackles are native to North America. That means they fall under the protection of the Migratory Bird Treaty Act.
Okay, and that's a federal law.
It is a foundational piece of federal environmental law. It makes it a strict federal offense to pursue, capture, kill, or disturb native migratory birds, their active nests, or their eggs.
So, comparing the invasive sparrow to a native grackle is the difference between kicking out a squatter and trying to evict someone holding an ironclad, federally backed lease on your dryer vet.
That is a very good analogy. You simply cannot touch the grackle's nest without facing serious federal penalties.
Though, and I found this fascinating, there is a very specific, somewhat weird Texas loophole mentioned in the sources regarding grackles.
Ah, yes. Texas law does provide a narrow exception. Grackle control can actually be performed without a permit, but only if the birds are congregating or concentrating in a manner that constitutes a direct nuisance or an immediate health hazard.
Okay, but who defines nuisance? That sounds pretty vague.
It is, which is why it's tricky. Because even then, the interpretation of what constitutes an active nest and the specific methods allowed for exclusion are highly regulated. You are still navigating a federal treaty at the end of the day.
I mean, if I'm a homeowner just trying to clean out my vents on a Saturday afternoon, this seems like an impossible trap. I am not an ornithologist.
Most people aren't.
Right. If a small brown bird darts out of my roofline, I have absolutely no way of knowing at a glance if that's an unprotected, invasive house sparrow or a federally protected native sparrow like a song sparrow. They look almost identical to the untrained eye.
They really do. And that visual similarity is exactly why DIY wildlife removal frequently crosses the line into accidental federal violations. Yeah. Because if you pull a nest out of your soffit and there are native eggs inside, ignorance of the species isn't a legal defense. You can't just tell the game warden, oh, I thought it was a starling.
They don't care?
Nope. This is the primary reason professional wildlife control operators are dispatched. You are paying for their ability to legally assess the nesting status, identify the exact species, and proceed within the rigid bounds of state and federal law.
Okay, but honestly, If the law makes it that complicated to even touch a nest, it's really tempting to just say, you know what? I'm not dealing with this. The birds can just stay in the vent. They'll fly away eventually.
I hear that all the time. But leaving them alone pivots the situation from a frustrating legal headache to an immediate physical threat to your house.
Okay, let's get into that. Because the physical dangers in these field notes are severe, and they apparently compound the longer the nest is ignored.
They absolutely compound. Let's look at the environment of a standard dryer vent. You have a 4-inch metal tube, right? It's designed to rapidly exhaust hot, moist air from a machine that routinely operates at temperatures high enough to bake the moisture out of wet clothing.
Right, it gets incredibly hot.
Yeah.
And what is a bird actively packing into that exact same 4-inch tube?
Dry twigs, dead grasses.
Pine needles, feathers. They are literally packing the vent with highly combustible tinder.
Exactly. You are combining a high-heat exhaust system with a dense blockage of dry kindling. It is a textbook recipe for a catastrophic structural fire.
That's terrifying.
And even beyond the fire risk, the sheer physics of the blockage creates a totally silent hazard.
You mean the gas appliances?
Yes. Many homes in Cypress utilize gas-powered dryers or gas ranges in the kitchen. The vents attached to those specific appliances aren't just for moving hot air or cooking smells. They are critical safety exhaust designed to carry carbon monoxide out of the living space.
Oh man, so if that vent is plugged tightly with grass and mud,
that colorless, odorless gas has nowhere to exit the building.
the pressure just forces the carbon monoxide to backdraft directly into the laundry room or the kitchen.
Exactly. It's incredibly dangerous.
So you have fire hazards on one hand and toxic gas backdrafts on the other.
Yeah.
But somehow, the most insidious threat highlighted by the critter team's protocols is actually biological.
Yes, the biohazard element is what really shocks people, and this requires looking at what happens to the biological waste left behind in these nests.
Right, because we go from a seemingly innocent, cute Snow White nature encounter to a full-blown biohazard warning. We need to talk about histoplasmosis.
We do.
Because if a bird is nesting in a bathroom exhaust fan, or worse, if they've pushed past the vent and actually set up a colony in your attic insulation, they're leaving behind a massive amount of droppings.
A staggering amount, really. And in a Texas attic, the temperature routinely exceeds 120 degrees in the peak of summer.
It's basically an oven up there.
It is. So that intense heat bakes all the moisture out of the bird droppings. But those droppings are incredibly rich in nitrogen, which creates the perfect breeding ground for a specific fungus called Histoplasma capsulatum.
Okay, so a fungus starts growing in the waste.
Right, and as the fungus grows in that dried, nitrogen-rich guano, it produces these microscopic airborne spores.
Which just sit there, dormant, until something disturbs them. And what disturbs them is usually the homeowner turning on the very fan the birds are nesting in. Right.
Exactly. When that bathroom exhaust fan kicks on, or when the central HVAC system creates negative pressure in an attic space, it acts like a giant aerosolizer.
Oh, wow.
It just whips those microscopic invisible fungal spores right into the air and circulates them through the home's ductwork.
And when you inhale those spores, they enter your lungs, where the moisture and the temperature of your own body allow that fungus to essentially wake up and transform into yeast.
Yes, and that is what causes the infection known as histoplasmosis.
Which can be devastating, especially for children, the elderly, or anyone with a compromised immune system.
It can require serious medical intervention. This biological mechanism completely reframes the concept of home maintenance.
Totally.
Maintaining the integrity of your exterior vents isn't just about keeping the house looking nice or preventing water intrusion. It is an active health and safety defense line.
Which is exactly why, when professionals from the critter team approach a bird extraction, they treat it primarily as a biological contamination zone.
They have to.
It totally explains why their crews don't just, climb up there with a garbage bag and a flashlight.
Yeah.
They're wearing full personal protective equipment.
Tyvek suits, heavy gloves, industrial respirators.
Because they have to protect their own respiratory systems from those histoplasmosis spores while they dismantle the nest. Otherwise, they might inadvertently spread that toxic material into the client's living space.
Right. And the level of precision required to safely navigate all of this, the biology, the federal law, and the structural risks, it really explains why a rigid, systematic approach is so necessary.
Yeah, you can't just wing it.
No pun intended. The sources note that Mike Garrett, who actually founded the Critter team back in 2015, spent 20 years serving in the U.S. Army before moving into wildlife control.
That military background translates perfectly to this kind of work, honestly.
It really does.
You need a highly tactical, protocol-driven mindset to execute an extraction without triggering a disaster, whether that's a legal disaster or a health one.
Exactly. He built the company on strict operational standards, backed by a multitude of highly specific credentials. He's a bird barrier certified installer. He holds the National Wildlife Control Operators Association BAT standard certification, and he's fully licensed by the state of Texas.
So he knows his stuff.
Definitely. And his team executes every single job through a mandatory 4-step operational process.
Let's actually break those 4 steps down, because I think it demystifies how a homeowner actually gets out of this nightmare situation. So it starts with step 1, the inspection phase. But this isn't just standing in the yard pointing at a bird, is it?
No, not at all. They are conducting a full exterior structural sweep.
Okay, what does that entail?
They map the entire perimeter of the home, starting from the foundation line all the way up to the peak of the roof and the chimney caps. They are looking for visual indicators.
Like what?
Active flight paths, watching where the birds are going, nesting debris hanging from louvers, or streaks of droppings running down the brickwork.
Okay. And what if the birds have actually gotten inside the house?
Well, if there is evidence that the birds have breached the exterior envelope and gotten into the attic, the inspection immediately moves indoors to assess the damage to the insulation and the ductwork.
Got it. So once they've mapped all the breaches, step 2 is safe removal. And this is where that federal legal knowledge gets applied in real time, right?
Exactly. This is the critical moment. If they determine it's an invasive sparrow or starling nest inside a duct, they use specialized extraction tools to carefully pull the nesting material backward out of the vent.
Backward. Oh, to avoid pushing it in deeper.
Right, ensuring they don't push any of that flammable debris further into the machine's exhaust system.
Makes sense. But what if the birds are native or they're just flying around loose in the attic?
If they are actively roosting in the attic, the approach shifts to humane exclusion. They install one-way excluder devices over the entry points.
How does a one-way excluder work?
It's essentially a funnel or a specialized door. It allows the birds to fly out to forage for food, but physically prevents them from re-entering the structure.
Oh, nice.
And crucially, if the inspection reveals hatchlings, even the unprotected invasive ones, the professional assessment dictates a timeline that allows those young birds to mature enough to leave.
Because you do not want to seal live animals inside a wall to die and decompose.
Exactly. That is a horrific outcome, both ethically and from an odor and biohazard standpoint.
Yikes, yeah. Which leads directly into step 3, cleanup and decontamination.
Right. Once the birds are legally and humanely cleared out, the crew comes in to remove all that soiled, dangerous insulation.
And they have to sanitize, right?
Yes. They apply specialized sanitizing agents. This does 2 things. It neutralizes the histoplasmosis spores, and it eliminates the pheromones the birds leave behind.
Wait, pheromones?
Yeah. If you don't aggressively scrub those pheromones away, other scouting birds will literally smell that a successful nest used to be there, and they'll try to break in again.
Wow, I had no idea they operated by scent like that. So that brings us to the final phase, step 4, exclusion and proofing.
Yes, the long-term defense stratagem.
And this heavily relies on understanding material science in the context of the local climate. Because this is where we need to talk about why DIY fixes fail so spectacularly.
They almost always fail.
Because, I mean, if I'm looking at a broken vent cover, my first instinct is to run to the hardware store, buy a $5 can of expanding polyurethane spray foam, and just blast the hole shut.
Of course.
Yeah.
It's cheap, it's fast, and it fills the gap.
Right. But you're saying that's a bad idea.
It will fail almost immediately in the Houston climate.
Why?
Because polyurethane spray foam is highly susceptible to photodegradation. Remember the UV light we talked about earlier?
The sun just destroys it.
Yes. The ultraviolet light from the Texas sun literally breaks down the chemical bonds of the foam. Within months, it turns yellow, it becomes brittle, and it just turns into dust. The birds can simply peck right through it.
Okay, well, what about stuffing the hole with steel wool I see that recommended on internet DIY forums constantly.
Steel wool is honestly even worse in this specific geography. Houston routinely sits at 80 or 90% humidity.
No way, the moisture.
When you expose untreated, highly porous steel wool to that level of atmospheric moisture, it undergoes rapid oxidation.
It rusts.
It rusts, loses all of its structural integrity, and disintegrates. You are left with a gaping hole and a terrible brown rust stain running down your exterior siding.
So the birds just push right through the rusted metal or the degraded foam a single season later, and you're just back to square one.
Exactly. This explains why the Critter team's protocols strictly forbid the use of spray foam or steel wool for exterior exclusion.
So what do they actually use then?
They rely entirely on weather-impervious metallurgy. They use heavy-gauge copper mesh, stainless steel screens that are custom-fitted for the weep holes in the brickwork, and thick, galvanized, powder-coated steel covers for the larger roof and wall vents.
And galvanized steel holds up better.
Much better. The zinc coating on the galvanized steel prevents the underlying metal from oxidizing, even in that brutal coastal humidity.
Now, there is one operational detail in the field notes that really stood out to me as a critical defense layer. The company performs all 4 of these steps in-house.
Yes. They do not use subcontractors for the carpentry or the metalwork.
Why is that so important?
Because maintaining an unbroken chain of custody over the repair is vital for actually guaranteeing the work. I mean, think about standard contracting. One company might do the removal, a second, entirely different company comes in to do the biohazard cleanup, and then a third independent contractor is hired a week later to seal the vents.
Right, pretty typical.
But in that fragmented process, crucial structural information is lost.
Oh, because the guy screwing on the new vent cover has absolutely no idea how the birds bypass the old one.
Exactly the problem. When the entire process is handled in-house, the technician who just spent 2 hours inside a sweltering attic tracking the exact flight path of the starlings, that is the exact same technician fabricating and bolting down the stainless steel cover.
They know intimately where the architectural vulnerabilities are.
Right, which ensures the seal is actually flawless.
So if you are listening to this, looking at your own home, and wondering when you should be checking for these vulnerabilities, the sources strongly emphasize that timing matters.
Timing is absolutely everything with bird control.
The optimal window to inspect your exterior vents, secure your chimney caps, and schedule preventative exclusion work is in late winter or early spring.
Right. You want to fortify the exterior before the massive wave of spring nesting behavior really kicks off.
So you want to install those galvanized covers while the scouting birds are merely exploring.
Yes. Long before they commit to bringing in nesting material, and certainly before they lay eggs, because once native eggs are in that vent, your options just freeze under federal law.
You're stuck.
You're completely stuck until they hatch and leave.
It really reframes the way we look at our own neighborhoods, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, we design these sprawling, beautifully manicured environments to be our perfect sanctuaries,
Yeah.
complete with artificial lakes and highly efficient climate-controlled homes.
But in doing so, we have accidentally engineered the ultimate predator-proof utopia for invasive wildlife.
Yeah. It really leaves you wondering how much of the modern home ownership experience is actually just an ongoing, silent negotiation with the ecosystems we've displaced.
It's the hidden cost of coexisting.
Definitely something to mull over the next time you hear a little scratching sound. Keep an eye on those vents, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.